Testing, testing. Book, and that's how it's pronounced on the if you have no, forget it. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm ready with a vengeance, and I hope you are too. It's been a while since my last update. I have a butt-ton of books to talk to you about. That is assuming that I can actually get through them all. That's my goal, but well, we'll just see how it goes. There's been several reasons why I got so far behind. One of the reasons is I actually was in a reading slump in December. It kind of works to my advantage as far as how many books I have to talk to you about, because I only finished 4 books in December. I just didn't have the mental focus. I was kind of stressed at work. The holidays stressed me out in general. And there was a book that I was reading that I started, I think like on December 7th, and I finished it on January, what's today, the 17th. I finished it maybe 3 days ago, which is a long time for me to read a book. I also came down with tinnitus, if that's how you say it. It's not like you're coming down with a cold, but tinnitus just all of a sudden hit me out of nowhere. So it made it hard to read with this loud buzzing in my ears. My doctor and I are trying to figure out what's happening, why that has come on, and if there's anything to do about it. So that's been fun. We are still trying to sell our house, and that's been kind of stressful because it just didn't sell as fast as we thought it would, that we hoped it would. We are trying to make ourselves feel better about it because really nobody's buying houses right now. It's just now starting to pick back up. So hopefully in the near future, we will sell our house. We did unfortunately lose the house that we wanted to buy, that we had an offer in. It was accepted. They accepted our contingency. They had to push the closing date back twice, and then they just wouldn't do it a third time. So that's kind of a bummer. So I've been dealing with a lot of stuff. Could always be worse. One really good update I can share with you is that Jake and Lucy are fast friends now. Just one day, my lack of patience worked in my favor, and I just kind of threw them both in the deep end, and I let Lucy out, and then I let Jake out at the same time, and just kind of let them deal with it. And it was a little touch and go, but he is super gentle with Lucy. Maybe I'll pop in some video of them playing. He gets annoyed sometimes with her because he is an older guy. He's going to be 10 this year, and he has his routine, and he's already kind of riddled with anxiety. He always has been. So when he's ready to do the thing that he normally does at certain times of the day, and she wants to play, he will give her a what for. And I say what for, but he will lunge and growl, and it sounds worse than it is, but he's never hurt her in any way. But he's very, very communicative and vocal, always has been. But for the most part, he is very gentle when they play, and they have a good time, and I think he loves her, and she adores him. And it's just so cute to watch, and we're just so relieved that it has turned out this way. She is super fun. We absolutely adore her. I'd like to say she will have a cameo in this video, but she is knocked out cold on my bed right now, which is why my bedroom door is cracked open a little bit, just in case she wakes up, but I doubt it. I don't think I have any other life updates. Work's going good. December was crazy busy. Or, you know, if anybody works in retail during the holidays, it's ridiculous. And then on top of that, when you live in kind of a destination touristy town and you work at a destination touristy bookstore, it was nutty. December was a really stressful time. I think I touched on it just a little bit in my favorites of 24 video. And if you haven't seen that, go check it out. If I think about it, I'll link it down below. But I just wanted to give you kind of a life update before we get into these books. So there are so many books. I'm so behind, and I really want to get through all of them in this video so that I can start fresh in my next update video and actually talk to you about books that I read this year. We'll see. I'm gonna go through them in chronological order. And the first book I have to talk to you about, I finished at the end of September. I'm a little behind. Are these books even relevant anymore? I mean, I don't know. So the first book I want to talk to you about, going way back to September, is Perestroika in Paris by Jane Smiley. Now, I didn't think this would be the first Jane Smiley book that I've ever read. I had 1,000 Acres on my TBR. I have featured Jane Smiley on books that I'm excited to be released. I think the one I talked about on one of my other videos is not her most recent one, but the one before that, A Dangerous Business. Still haven't gotten to that one yet. And I picked this one because it's a staff pick at work. One of the owners of the store loves this book. I decided to give it a try, especially after reading the synopsis. So Perestroika is a thoroughbred racehorse at a racetrack just outside of Paris. Perestroika goes by the short name of Paras, which sounds more Spanish than French. That's how it's pronounced on the audio, and I did listen to this book. Anyways, one day Paras finds her stall door was left open, and being the curious mare that she is, she walks out and she escapes the racetrack. She soon befriends a German short-haired dog who is a little bit more adept to getting around town and getting food for them, and they hang out for a while, just the two of them. Then along the way, Paras meets a couple of geese, I believe, or ducks, a raven, and then a couple of other creatures. And then she also meets a small boy, Etienne, who is currently living in this huge house with his nearly 100-year-old great-grandmother, and they're living in seclusion. And Paras finds herself in this unlikely friendship, several unlikely friendships. The story goes from there. The story is narrated from Paras's perspective. So these are basically talking animals. Of course, the humans in the story can't hear them talk, but they all speak and have dialogue in the story. I really did expect to like it more than I did. With talking animals and a story that is from the point of view of all these animals, I expected a little bit more whimsy. I expected the animals to have a little bit more personality. I would say the side characters had more personality definitely than Paras had. Paras was kind of dull. I mean, she was very naive, which I think fits because she was raised at a racetrack. That's all she's known is the racetrack. And so she's let out in the City of Lights, and she's learning about this city and meeting all these other animals and humans along the way. Other than that, her personality was just, she was a bit dull. I expected a little bit more from Paras. The story of the friendship between Etienne and Paras was cute at times, was heartwarming at times, but again, not anything incredibly engaging. So I really wanted to love this a lot more than I did. I liked it, and I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I read a Jane Smiley book. I will try another, but maybe this was her writing that just didn't work for me. Who knows? It was okay, but it was a cute story. I just expected more. The next book I read on my Kindle because I've had it as, I think, a freebie for a really long time, and it's Mississippi Blood by Greg Iles. This is the 6th in the Pen Cage series that I've been reading, and I decided to finally get to this one because the 7th has come out. My husband is currently reading it. He has been reading it for several months because there are bricks of books. The series is fantastic. It's kind of hard to tell you what it's about because it's the 6th in the series without giving any spoilers. If any of you are reading that series, I do highly recommend it. And actually, I would recommend just the first 3. And actually, the 3rd one was my favorite. It's my husband's favorite as well, and that's The Devil's Punch Bowl. It's just really great. It follows, Pen Cage is he is from Natchez, Mississippi, but then he goes to Houston and becomes this big time district attorney, and he gets married and he has a daughter, and then his wife gets sick and dies. And so he moves back to Natchez to be more of a small time lawyer, I believe, and raise his daughter. He gets kind of caught up in small town, southern mob type criminal activity, some white supremacy drama and crimes. When you have a series that, you're on number 6, so much has happened that I can't even pinpoint certain things that happen in each book. What even happened in this one? It's been so long. Oh, that's right. This one, his dad, who is the town doctor, he gets accused of murdering his nurse. And this case has roots that go back decades. Actually, kind of a big part of the story is the Cages are white and his nurse is black. And so there's this whole race tension aspect to the story. So Penn decides he wants to defend his father, but his father refuses to tell Tom why. So there's a lot of tension, a lot going on, and it was really good. It was about 200 pages too long. I really enjoy his writing, but the more he gets into the series, the more he is like, I guess, not taking his editor's calls. I don't know, but I will read Southern Man because I'm too invested in the series not to, but it'll be a minute before I pick that giant beast up. I don't want to beat up this book too much because he really does in most of his books, but specifically in this series, there's a lot of commentary on an exploration of racism. It talks a lot about and asks the questions of, when white people advocate for people of color, is it out of kindness or is it out of guilt? And Greg Iles does a really, really good job of exploring those themes. Yes, it was too long, but I did write a note here. I was immediately sucked into the story. He does that in all of his books, and I've read other books outside of the series. I would definitely recommend the series. The next book I read was Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that Liane Moriarty is one of my favorite authors. This is her latest book, and I wasn't disappointed. I really enjoyed it. It didn't really have that crazy twist that she has in most of her books, but I did enjoy the story. I did enjoy the characters. This one opens up in an airplane right before takeoff, and the flight has been delayed, and everybody's kind of just sitting impatiently in their seats in the airplane. And during this time, you are reading about 3 to 4 maybe sets of characters. One's a flight attendant, and then the other ones are passengers on the plane, and you're learning about these characters that you'll end up following through the rest of the book. And then out of nowhere, this older woman, stands up and starts walking down the aisle from one end of the plane to the other and pointing at random people saying, "I expect you shall die of," and she would give the cause of death and the date of death, their age when they die. And I think if memory serves, the 4 or 5 sets of characters that you end up following in the story, their predictions of when they're going to die is relatively soon. So you follow them as they react to this prediction. Most of them, of course, kind of laugh it off like, who is this kook of a woman and why does she think she can predict when I'm going to die, much less how? But then very soon, there's an article in the news that one of these characters does die in exactly the way this woman predicted. And so then they all start to rethink what has been told to them. The story goes from there about those characters, but you're also going back and forth and you're learning about those characters in one timeline, and then you're also learning about the woman who makes these predictions and how she ended up, how she could predict these things about these strangers. So I had a good time with this story, wondering where it was going to go, how this woman knew these things about these people. I enjoyed the characters. And as you got to know each of the characters and you knew how supposedly each one was going to die, I thought that perhaps maybe some of the predictions might be mixed up, like, a domestic assault was supposedly going to happen to this particular person, but this other person, it seemed more likely that it was going to happen to that person. So I was wondering if that was going to be the way it goes. So that part of the story was intriguing, and I really did enjoy that. But there were a couple of other themes that kind of took me by surprise that were explored in this story. Like one of the things, I can't remember exactly what part of the story that this came up, but it was brought up that it's really rare to sit quietly with your loved ones and just do nothing but sit quietly with them. Either you're drinking or eating, or just there's something between you, whether it be a meal or a beverage of some sort or a game or whatever. There's something between you. And why is that we cannot just sit and be, I mean, some of us can, and maybe all of us can sometimes, but it's not very common that we just sit and be with our loved ones. And I thought that was really interesting. And then another thing that was brought up in the story that I thought was really interesting was the just world fallacy. Probably some of you have heard of this. I had heard of it before, but this was the best explanation of it. It's the erroneous belief that the world is fair. It makes the world more predictable, therefore more comfortable, if we believe good behavior is rewarded and bad behavior is punished. But the problem with this is that we subconsciously think that when bad things happen to people, they deserve it. And that is a problem. That makes us a little less empathetic towards people. That's where victim blaming comes in sometimes. And I thought that was an interesting exploration in this story. Bottom line, that the main story of the predictions and the characters and what they do with these predictions, I enjoyed it. Now, the answer that comes, of course, towards the end of the book of how she was able to make those predictions, it fell a little flat for me, but it did make sense. So it was realistic. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just put it out there like that. But I did enjoy this story. If you like Liane Moriarty, you will like this one. It is a chunker, but I didn't feel like it was too long. I listened to this one. As always, it takes place in Australia. The narrator has an Australian accent, and I enjoy that immensely. Yeah, I will continue to read Liane Moriarty's stuff. I love her writing. I love her stories. The next book I read the ARC for, but it has been released since, and that is Clean by Alia Trabuco Zeran. This is translated by Sophie Hughes from the Spanish. This, I think it takes place, I want to say in Chile because the author is Chilean, but it never really says, I don't think. If it did, I don't remember. This one follows Estela, who comes in from the countryside to work for the senor and the senora when their child is born, their daughter. She's a live-in maid, and she cooks for them, she cleans for them, does the laundry, and takes care of the baby for 7 years. And while she's there, she sees the Senora's coldness. She sees the husband's distance. She hears the fights. She feels the friction. She knows about the gun. She knows about the poison in the cupboard. And you follow Estela as she is basically invisible to the upper class family, but nothing is invisible to Estela. She takes everything in. And you are very, very hyper aware of the division between Estela's class and the people she works for. And then one day, the daughter, the 7-year-old daughter, ends up dead. And this whole story is told from Estela's perspective. And you know from the very beginning that she is telling her story to the police in an interrogation room, but you don't know if she is being interrogated or if she's being questioned as a witness, or if she's giving a confession. I found this very interesting, very well written. Interestingly enough, she has a nonfiction book called When Women Kill. But yes, I enjoyed this very much. Very engaging. You're constantly asking yourself, well, did she do it? Maybe she didn't do it. If she did do it, I can see why. The author puts you in Estela's shoes, and it is not a comfortable place to be. I'm always really impressed with it when an author makes you feel uncomfortable, but you still really like being in that story. So yes, I would recommend this one. It is out now. Oh my God, you guys, I am so behind. It came out mid-October, so this is available for you if you are interested. The next book I read was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I was really excited to read this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I read Foster. That's the only other Claire Keegan book that I have read, and I loved it. It's so good. She packs so much in just small amount of pages, and I expected the same with this one. The other reason I was super excited to read this is they have made a movie of this book, and Cillian Murphy is in it, who I love. So I definitely wanted to read this before I saw the movie, because of course that's what you do. It's beautifully written. She's definitely a wonderful writer, but not a whole lot happens here, at least not on the surface. And I listened to this book. It only lasted 2 hours. It's very, very short. This takes place in a small Irish town in the mid-80s. I think with any small Irish town in the mid-80s, it's ruled by the church. And you're following Bill, who is a good man. He's a family man, and he is a coal merchant. Like, he delivers coal, I think, for heating to everybody there in the town. And he discovers something kind of disturbing that's happening in relation to the church. And really the questions that are explored in this story is, doing the right thing in the face of adversity, towing the line, not rocking the boat, things like that. Because sometimes doing the right thing is absolutely the hardest thing to do. So definitely interesting themes going on here, but I just felt like there was way too much unsaid and even unshown in this book. So I was a little disappointed by this. I imagine the movie is going to be extremely slow unless they take creative liberties with the story, regardless of Cillian Murphy being in it. I didn't like this one as much as I enjoyed Foster. It didn't get to my heart as much as Foster did. I don't know. I think it just left too much unsaid and too much to the reader to figure out, and maybe it was above my head. Who knows? I didn't hate it. It just not enough happened for me. This next book is the first in several DNFs of books that are hugely hyped or loved by the masses. This one, I think, is hugely hyped, and it didn't work for me, and that is Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. Apologies for that. I tried to listen to this. Maybe that was my first mistake. Who knows? But I don't think it was for me. And I don't think it was any one thing. I think it was a combination of things, the culmination of ideas in this particular story. This follows, I believe, 2 women in the not too distant future who are in prison, and they had like a gladiator system in prisons. And I think this story is essentially a commentary on the current prison system and how it's run and how it's a business making money in a way that you really shouldn't be making money. And I think that is an interesting and worthy premise to a story. I just didn't really connect with the characters. I didn't connect with the gladiator storyline, although I think that is a creative way to go about telling the story of kind of the prison system as it is today. But I just didn't connect. It wasn't for me. And I think absolutely 100% it was a me thing. So I DNF'd pretty early on, like at 15%. But what do you guys think? Do you think I didn't give it enough time? Did anybody really love the story? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about it on Booktube, so I'd be interested to know. Next book I read was very, very short. This was an arc, although I think it is out now. No, it comes out in March. This one is called Hunchback, and it is by, the last name is Ichikawa, and it is translated by Polly Barton. This is Japanese literature. Very interesting origins to this story. So this one follows a woman named Shaka. It is in Japan. She was born with a congenital muscle disorder. It leaves her with a severe curvature in her spine, and she is confined to a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair, and she lives at a home that she receives 24-hour care. She has some privacy. She has her own like suite, if you will, and she has nurses that kind of come and go. But while she is physically limited to her wheelchair and this home, she studies, she reads, she tweets, she writes on a website of erotica. And then one day, a male nurse shows up, a new guy, and he has read her erotica and tells her that he knows who she is and knows what she writes. And she responds with what you would call an indecent proposal. And that's all I'm going to say about this. My personal opinion about the story, it's disturbing, it's weird. I didn't know how to feel about this book, and I didn't know how to feel about my friend who told me to read it. It's very different, but I will say this. It's clearly a commentary on how able-bodied people view disabled body people and how they are invisible to most of the world. And I think that's super, super important. This is, I believe, semi-autobiographical, and this character asserts her sexual autonomy. She pushes boundaries with her online presence while struggling with her physical limitations. And basically she is establishing her own agency in a world that completely overlooks her needs and the needs of all the people in her position. So I think it's a really important story. There's certain content that I found to be disturbing, so I'll just leave that with you. It's only 90 pages, so you could probably knock that out in an afternoon at your own risk. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through all of these books. My husband's going to be home from work soon. I'm going to go through one more, and then hopefully I'll try to record again next week. The last book I'm going to talk to you about is a cozy mystery, and this is Murder in an Irish Bookshop by Carleen O'Connor. This was picked by one of my coworkers at work for our staff book club, and I enjoyed it very much. It's very cozy. It's part of a series. I think there's like Murder in an Irish pub, there's Murder in an Irish library, stuff like that, where you're following the same character. What is her name? Siobhan. And I think the first in the series, she's maybe a teenager or someone in her early 20s who just kind of falls into investigating crimes that happen in her small Irish town. And in this one, which I think is number 7, she is a police officer in her Irish town. This one particular murder happens in a new bookshop that has opened up. Everybody's super excited. There are some side characters that I think reappear in every single book. This is, if you like a cozy mystery, if you like anything that takes place in Ireland, I think you would enjoy this story. I enjoyed the characters. If there weren't so many other series that I am working my way through, I would go back and read the first one and follow Siobhan's story from the beginning. But I just don't think that is feasible for me at this point. But I did enjoy this book. I am glad that I read it. I think this cover is super cute. The name of the bookstore is Turn the Page, which is really cute. If you like a cozy mystery, you should check this one out. So that is it. I know I had this other stack of books. I promise you I'm going to record again, but that is it for this video. I have got to wrap this up, and that way I can edit it and get this out and catch you up on some more books. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.